My name's Andy Holmes. I'm a professional author and writer, and I'm here to tell you the truth about majoring in creative writing. And here's the truth. If you want to be a writer, do not major in creative writing. You will not get what you are looking for as a writer in that major. And when I say writer, I'm specifically referring to a novelist or a short story writer, a poet, a screenwriter, specifically something in the arts. Creative writing majors will not help you. Now, I'm not saying that if you want to be a writer, you shouldn't go to college at all. This is not some video where I rant about how college is stupid and you shouldn't go to college. I'm just specifically saying if you want to write and you want to get to a professional standard and you think that majoring in creative writing will get you there, you're wrong. I'll tell you a personal story about me, because what I figured out that I wanted to be a writer in about the 11th or 12th grade in high school. And I started to take writing pretty seriously. I was reading a lot. I was starting to practice. And what I ran into is I knew no writers. I didn't know any publishers, any literary agents. I didn't know anybody that had any connection to that field whatsoever. I could find doctors. I could find real estate agents. I could find car salesmen, lawyers, accountants, chiropractors, even some professional athletes, like you name it. I could find it and find those people to talk to, but there was no professional writers or even journalists anywhere within my network that could mentor me, apprentice me, point me in the right direction, or anything like that. And I'm assuming you are in the same boat, just because there isn't like a mass population of professional writers that know what they're doing out there. There just isn't. Why did I major in creative writing, and what was I hoping to get out of it? The first thing I wanted to get out of it was I wanted to learn how to write books, like novels. Okay, like in high school you write like these essays that are 10 pages max at the very most. I think I wrote one 10-page essay in high school. The longest things I wrote were little short stories that I wrote on my own, and I made a few feeble attempts to write a novel in high school, and I never could get past like 3 chapters. So I wanted to learn how to write long story fiction. Like, how do you go from the blank page to a 400 to 500 page novel? How do you do that? Well, as a professional writer and author now, I know how to do that. And I can tell you that there's a lot of practice that you need to do before you get there. And there's a lot of different techniques and ways and methods and systems that you need to know and use to be able to produce quality writing in a narrative that goes from the blank page all the way through 500 pages and engage the reader the whole time. I didn't learn that in college. I didn't learn that majoring in creative writing. There wasn't anything I learned as a creative writing major that taught me how to write a novel. There was not a single course in 4 years of creative writing major courses called How to Write a Novel. You would think that if you majored in creative writing for 4 years, there'd be a class called How to Write a Novel. It doesn't exist. So these like little the tools of writing are not taught to you. How do you handle dialogue? How do you handle style? How do you handle narration, description, setting, pace, language, paragraph structure, chapter breaks? Like, none of these things are taught to you in a creative writing class. I also was really excited to go to college because I wanted to interact with people who were in the industry who had actually made a living writing things, like published authors. Maybe they could point me in the right direction of where I could actually meet one, even if they hadn't made it, but that didn't happen. So my very first day in college, I was super excited to go to my first English literature class. I was really excited to like start learning. I was all jazzed up to be a writer, and I go to class, and this guy walks in. He's a professor, and he immediately starts lecturing the class in Old English, like straight up like Gaelic Old English, like impossible to understand, like the original like English language that Chaucer used to write in or something. I don't know. And then after about 2 minutes of this, he says, "I'm speaking in Old English, and by the end of this class, you guys have to learn how to speak this and read this." And I spent like 3 months of my life learning how to read and understand Old English. And the reason behind this was so we could understand the history of language and storytelling. I guess I can see some value in that, But it didn't make any sense to me. I didn't really see how like me learning Old English was going to translate into writing a bestseller. It just didn't make any sense. From that class, I went to my creative writing class, and I was like, all right, well, maybe this will be better. This will be more interesting. And the professor decided to have lunch with each one of us on an individual basis to interview us to see what we wanted to learn, like kind of as a survey. And I was like, all right, cool. So when I met with him, I told him I want to be a novelist. And then he asked me what books I was reading. I told him what books I was reading. And he's like, that's good. You have a very wide variety of books that you're reading. You have to be very widely read if you're going to make it. Then the next thing he says to me is, but I have to warn you, becoming a published novelist is next to impossible. I have been trying to do it for 5 years and I've been unable to do it. But I do know a lot about writing, so I'm teaching here. Part of me died inside. Like, my parents were shelling out a lot of money for me to go to this school to sit in front of this guy who was going to teach me creative writing, who basically had been failing for 5 years and had never published anything before. How does that make any sense? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I can't tell you how many professors and teachers and classes were taught by people who had never written anything, right? The other thing that was really interesting, and like, the other thing that was very interesting to me in my course of getting a creative writing degree was like how little writing you actually do. As a professional author, I aim to write 5,000 to 10,000 words a week. That's like my goal. You know, I consider the week a wash, a failure, if I don't write 5,000 words at the bare minimum that week. In the first 6 months of being a creative writing major, I probably wrote about 5,000 words in 6 months as a creative writing major. Because you write like little paragraphs, you write like a page here, and that doesn't translate to the speed or the production level that you need to be operating at to be a professional author. It just doesn't. Being a writer is a little bit like, you know, I hate to use this metaphor, but it's a little bit like exercise, a little bit like fitness, right? If you want to be able to bench press your body weight, you have to start with just the bar and then add the weights on one at a time. And you have to bench press every day and diet right and work at it right all the time. If you want to be a professional novelist who's putting out multiple books a year, you have to write every single day. And you have to work and work and work until your writing muscles are in such shape where there's not like a lot of mental anguish or effort when you're writing. You don't get that being a creative writing major. You can get that on self-discipline, just writing yourself, just sitting down like, okay, I have a quota of how many words I need to write today. I'm not going to leave this desk until I make that quota. If you do that and you make that quota, then yes, it will get easier for you and you will be able to hit those higher outputs of 5,000, 10,000 words a week, even like 5,000 words a day, really, if you wanted to. But being a creative writing major doesn't enforce that on you. Because here's the thing, like, for me, when I was in college especially, my hero, my opinion leader in the industry at that time was Stephen King. He was like the guy I wanted to be. He was the career that I was envious of. And he was putting out a new novel, like a big novel, every 3 to 6 months. There's no way I was going to write novels like that, never taking a course in novel writing, and writing 5,000 words every 6 months. It just wasn't going to happen. Let me just say this. Well, I got to say something positive about it because it wasn't all bad. Being a creative writing major is not some torturous, agonizing thing where you don't learn anything. You do learn things, but you don't learn how to write. You do learn how to read more, and you do get exposed to all types of literature. And one thing I will accredit majoring in creative writing to is my love of classic literature. I never read classic literature. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't have a care for it. I wasn't really even interested in it until I went to college. And now one of my biggest heroes is Ernest Hemingway. I've read a lot of his books and I've learned so much about the craft of writing from him. And I got introduced to him in my creative writing course where we had an assignment to read The Old Man and the Sea. So one positive thing that you will get out of majoring in creative writing is you will be forced to read things that are on shelves in the bookstore that you would never visit. And that's a good thing because you get this very wide exposure to all different genres and types of writing, which you wouldn't get just running around the library, unless you purposely decided to like go genre hop around. But that wasn't me. Before I went to college, I only read like horror and fantasy and like Lord of the Rings type stuff and like a few Stephen King novels and lots of comic books. I was a voracious reader, but I only read specific types of books, so I only wrote that way. And then when I started to read, some of the classics, it opened my eyes up to the beauty of the language, and I got very interested in how language works. I didn't learn how language worked as a creative writing major, but I learned to appreciate it, and then I got interested in it. The other thing they don't teach you is anything about the industry. Not once in 4 years of being a creative writing major did I ever hear the word literary agent or publishing house, or like, you'd think there'd be a class called how to get your book published. Doesn't exist. So I'll just say this before I like end off my bashing on it. If you want to learn how to write, you won't learn like the vital tools that you need as a creative writing major. And like, just also as a point of clarification, I went to 3 different colleges. I seem to hop around a lot, different schools. I went to 3 different colleges and majored in creative writing in all 3 of these different schools, and took writing classes in all 3 of these schools. It's the same thing everywhere, at least in these 3 schools that I went to. They don't teach you the vital tools that you need. And there are tools that you need to be a writer. There are things that you, like if you're going to go change a tire, you need a tire iron. If you're going to go be a carpenter, you need a saw, you need sandpaper. There's things that you need. As a writer, you also have tools. They're not as obvious because they're all subjective and they're mental. It's just you and the blank page, but you also have mental tools and things you can use to get you through the writing process. And you have to understand structure. You have to understand plot, story structure, narration, setting, description, pacing, paragraph breaks, paragraph structure, syntax, grammar, like chapter structure, like time. How do you handle time in fiction? How do you write books that only take place in a day, 10 years? Locations? Do you need to be drawing maps? Like, there are so many tools and techniques that you need as a writer, and you just won't get those. I'm sorry, you just will not get those majoring in creative writing. That doesn't mean that it's impossible to learn these tools. You can learn them. They're all over the place. Like how I taught myself how to write by finding the authors that I loved and looking up online what they suggested, what they had to say about writing, books that they wrote about writing, things that they said that worked for them, and they would point me in the right direction. And I sort of like spent like a 2-year period of my life just researching online how famous authors wrote books. And then I just read everything about it and like practiced it and practiced what I learned. And I developed my own techniques based off of all of this. And there are 3 key books that I really do suggest you read if you want to be a writer and learn these techniques. I made a video on that. I'll link it below if you want to check that out. And here's a few famous writers that didn't even go to college at all, barely graduated from high school, and these are some giants in the industry. Ray Bradbury, Mark Twain, Maya Angelou, Charles Dickens. So my point in this is there doesn't seem to be a correlation between getting a degree and then making it as a novelist. Maybe like it's different in other professions. Like if you're going to be a lawyer, okay, and you went to Harvard Law, you're probably going to be a successful lawyer. But if you go to Harvard and you major in creative writing, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to be a New York Times best-selling author, okay? Like when you go fill out a job resume, they're going to want to know what your degree is, what's your education. You're going to put that in your resume. When you're trying to send your book out into the world, nobody cares where you went to school. You can say, I have a PhD in English literature from Princeton, Yale, Harvard, and Brown, and NYU, and then they read your manuscript and it's a piece of crap. Nobody cares. If you say, I wrote this in jail, I'm in a jail cell, I didn't even finish middle school, and it's like a piece of gold, and it's a bestseller, they're going to pay you a lot of money. That's just how it works. Which is also part of why I love the writing industry, because it really is based on who's good, who is the best, who's talented. And I really do believe that if you're a really talented writer and you work hard at it, you will eventually find an audience and your work will get out there if it's good. If it's not good, it might not work. But even if it is good, it might take 10 years. I don't know. Okay, so now that I said all the negative things about college and being a writer, I'm going to say a couple positive things. There are some writers that went to college and who are very, very successful. Isaac Asimov, he was a scientist, a biochem scientist, and he wrote a lot of science fiction. You know, you may have heard of some of his work. He wrote I, Robot. They made a movie out of it with Will Smith. His most famous novels are called the Foundation novels. They're incredible. You should check them out. Another writer who went to college was David Baldacci. He's an incredibly talented writer. I love his stuff. I love his thrillers. He's had his books turned into movies starring Clint Eastwood, like big-time books. And then John Grisham. Everybody's heard of John Grisham. He wrote The Firm. That was his breakout novel. Both John Grisham and David Baldacci were lawyers. They were attorneys, successful attorneys. But if you notice something about the three names I just gave you, John Grisham's an attorney, David Baldacci is an attorney, and they both write mysteries and thrillers that have something to do with the legal field. They write about lawyers or political law or criminal law or whatever it is. And then Isaac Asimov was an extremely educated scientist, biochemist. He wrote a lot of like hard-boiled science fiction. Like if you read his science fiction, it's a lot about like the science of robots and AI and stuff. And it's based in like real research, real data. So here's what I think. If you want to be a writer and you want to go to college, learn the craft of writing on your own. Like go out and find the techniques and the laws of writing, because they're not that complicated and it doesn't take you 4 years of schooling to learn. It really doesn't. It took me a long time to go find all of it and compile it. But once I did that, and if I really look at all the information on how to write, like all the different tools laid out by like professionals on what they do, you can learn all of it really in like 6 months on your own on a part-time schedule. You really could. And with enough practice, you can master these things. So if you're going to go to college to be a writer, learn the craft of writing on this, like on your own, dedicate a lot of time to it, but major in something that you want to write about. Okay? Like if you're going to be a science fiction author and you want to focus on that, maybe you should major in engineering or science, or even like, I don't know, you could major in like sociology or something, or philosophy, and learn how to incorporate those things, those subjects that you're studying into your fiction. Or if you want to be like John Grisham and like, you can major in law, or you can major in accounting and then like write finance books or read that into your stories. I'm sure you could find some interesting stories there. My point is, don't rely on the university system to teach you how to write. Don't major in creative writing and if you want to be a writer, because it's not going to get you there. The thing that's going to get you there is writing a lot, reading widely, and doing lots and lots and lots of research on your own. And if you're going to go to college, pick a major. Again, if you're going to go to college, pick a major that's around an area that you want to write in or write about. One of my biggest regrets, honestly, is majoring in creative writing. I wish I would have picked a major that would have exposed me to more action in the world, more life. Would have had me like moving around the city a bit more, seeing different industries, different people, different characters. Because that's where you get the magic. That's where you get the stuff to write with. As a creative writing major, you're kind of in a room with a tower of books and you read them, which is good, but you don't need to pay a university a bunch of tuition to sit in a room and read books. You can do that for free. So do that for free. Read for free. Learn for free. Learn about writing for free. Get a masterclass subscription for $150 a year, and you'll learn more about writing on that app alone. And I'm going to do a review on that app, so check back for that. You'll learn more on that app in a year than you will ever going to university about writing. So learn to write for free. Read the books for free. If you're going to pay to go to college, major and focus in an area that's going to fuel and drive and saturate your writing. So there you go. Again, my name's Andy Holmes. I'm a professional writer and author. That's my opinion on whether or not being a creative writing major will help you as a writer. Obviously, if you watch this video, it didn't help me. I hope you found this insightful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I do check it. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.